So we have here some questions from Vladimir of Russia about Papaji. Question number 1 is, during your work on Call Off the Search, you communicated a lot with Papaji. What were his feelings about the film? How did he behave while shooting? Was it easy or difficult to work with him? He was very enthusiastic. What happened was a friend of mine, Jim Lemkin, had been trying to make a film in Tiruvannamalai about the nature of happiness. He had this conviction that he could find people in India who were very poor or disadvantaged in some way, but who were inherently very happy, and he wanted to make a film about how happy poor people could be. But somehow it wasn't working very well. He didn't have much money, he didn't have a grant, he was doing all this out of his own finances. He had been to see Papaji, and I suggested, why don't you go to Lucknow and ask Papaji if you can make a film about him, because at that time there were people there who would have been more than happy to pay all his expenses. He could have got a lot of money to make this film. I went up to Lucknow. Jim appeared a few weeks later with his proposal to make this film. Papaji was immediately very enthusiastic, and he called me over and said, you go and make this film with him. I had no idea how to make films. I'd never made a film before in my life. I had no technical knowledge. I had no idea what filmmaking involved. But I think Papaji put me on the job as a kind of technical consultant on the content. Jim, he was a lecturer in photography at Harvard, so he knew the business of filmmaking, he knew, but I don't think he was completely immersed in Papaji's worldview or Papaji's teachings, or possibly how to present those teachings in a way that Papaji would approve of. This is my guess, so I got sent along to make sure the content somehow adequately presented Papaji properly. First thing I decided to do was to have a long interview myself, in which I would ask questions, and hopefully Papaji would talk about his life, all the various key points of his teachings, and we could intersperse or include some of these shots in the movie itself. That was the portion of the film which, if you watch Call Off the Search, there are red bougainvillea in the background. We shot that film in the local government park in Lucknow. That was a very nice interview. It was so nice we ended up producing it as a separate film and marketing that as well. Then people were very deferential, polite, and possibly over-respectful towards Papaji, which is very nice if you're in a guru-disciple relationship, but it doesn't necessarily make good film. So that there was one man, a friend of mine called Ram, who had spent a large portion of the previous year having long, quarrelsome arguments with Papaji about philosophy, Advaita, his teachings. He wasn't the sort of person who would just sit quietly and say, yes, Papaji, yes, Papaji, yes, Papaji. He was someone he had a very good intellect, a good brain, and he liked challenging. So I thought, this is what we need. We need someone to push Papaji and provoke him a little bit, because in my experience, he enjoyed being provoked, and the more you provoked him, the more strong and the more powerful his teaching response would be. So I suggested that we recruit Ram to give him a rough time on this interview. And initially he wasn't very happy. He said, I've been talking to that man for a year, he doesn't listen to me, he doesn't understand. And I said, well, that's the whole point. We need someone who's a little bit skeptical, someone who's going to challenge you, because when you're challenged, you give very good responses. So Papaji agreed to this. We went to Ram's house, and we did another really good interview with Ram. You see portions of that. He's in his library with thousands and thousands of books in the background. That's Ram. And It was. It was polite, it was respectful, but Rome was definitely challenging him quite a lot. And this produced some very good responses from Papaji. And when it was all over, I think it's on this, it's not in Call Off the Search, but it's in the interview. Ram just broke down into tears. He couldn't play the game anymore. He couldn't play the adversary anymore. He just started crying. He got up and hugged Papaji, and Papaji laughed and he said, "You played your role very well. You did a very good job." So that was another component of the film. So each time I suggested this should be in or that should be in, he was completely happy with it. He wanted this film to come out. Then I suggested that we film his regular satsangs every day over a period of time, just to get a good sample of the kind of people who were coming to see him, the kind of questions that were being asked, his responses. Now this was at the beginning of summer. In North India, that means it's hot. It's probably 35 outside. We didn't have air conditioning. So then we got these several thousand watt lamps blaring at Papaji every day, and each day it was getting a little bit hotter, a little bit hotter, and a little bit hotter. And the discomfort didn't bother him. What did bother him was the streak in his character that said, "I want something to happen now." This was very strong with him. He didn't believe in delay. He didn't believe in long, drawn-out projects. For example, when I started to edit Papaji interviews for him, after about less than a week, he said, "Where is it? Where's the book? I want to see the book." He didn't really understand the process of creating a literary or a film project, that it took weeks and weeks and weeks, or possibly months, and you had to have a lot of attention to detail, and there had to be a lot of checking, a lot of editing, first draft, second draft, third draft, with the film as well as the book. So the only, it's not negative, but the only not positive response from Papaji all the time was impatience. "Where's this film? I want to see this film. Hurry up, I want to see this film." I was trying to keep the film satsangs going as long as possible to get more and more material. Papaji was saying, come on, you've got enough. Go off and make your film." And in the end, I think we filmed probably about 3 or 4 weeks, and then picked out the best portions. Then I asked, or rather I told him, that I wanted to speak to people who had had good experiences with him. And he was also very positive about this. So he actually called some of his Indian devotees up and asked them to come along to his house and come along and be filmed. So he was very much initiating cooperation from Satsang Bhavan, from all his old devotees. He wanted people to sit in front of the camera and talk about their experiences. You have to understand that this is a key element in Papaji's teaching approach. He wants people to stand up in public and say, "I have had this wonderful experience." Because he says the biggest obstacle to getting this experience is doubt. He says, "I can say I've got this experience, and you will say, oh, but you're a great saint, you had a great guru, what about me, I'm just an ordinary person." He said that kind of doubt is what stops you from understanding and experiencing directly what I'm talking about in this moment. So what you need to counteract this doubt is to see ordinary people, such as yourself, stand up, absolutely full of light. They just got it, something's happened. And when he sees that light in someone's face, he would often say, "Right, stand up, tell everybody what happened." And then these people would stand up in a state of ecstasy, rapture, and try and talk about what had happened to them. And in those days, this would happen several times a week. And the momentum of all these people giving public testimony to what they discovered in his presence was actually so strong, there was a kind of cumulative effect. People's doubts were eroded, people would stop thinking this is some great mysterious state that I will attain after 10 lifetimes. And they would think, I know him, I had coffee with him yesterday. If it happened to him, it can happen to me today. So people went into satsang really thinking, this could happen to me today, this is going to happen to me today, I want this to happen to me today. And this subtle shift, when you dropped your doubt, was actually all it needed for a lot of people to take delivery of what Papaji was saying and to actually have a direct first-hand experience of it. So public testimony is very, very important for him. So when he started sending people out from Lucknow to the West to talk, often he wasn't saying go and talk about the teaching, he would say go and tell people what happened to you in Lucknow, which is a subtle difference. He wanted ordinary people to go back to their country, to tell their friends, their relations, I went to Lucknow, this amazing thing happened. If you want something similar to happen, go there and maybe it will happen. So he said, I can't go all around the world telling this truth to people, but you've had some taste of this here. People can see from your face, you're absolutely radiant, you're lit up, something has transformed you. Go back to where you came from, tell your boyfriend, your mother, your friends, look what happened to me, this is the truth, this is reality, I found it, if you want it, this is how you find it. So that was a key secondary part of this process. He liked people to give testimony in satsang about what had happened, so the people there would slowly lose their doubts, and then if people asked, can I give satsang, can I teach, often he would say, go back to your own country and tell people what happened to you. That way more people would have their doubts lessened, people would actually come to see him, and the whole process would go on. I wasn't there when it happened, but a friend of mine who was staying with Papaji in his Nari house in central Lucknow said that Gangaji wrote several times to Papaji asking if she could give satsang, and then I think after 3 or 4 written attempts he finally said, invite people round for tea and tell them what happened to you in Lucknow. This, I think, was the essence of what he wanted people to do when they left Lucknow. Let's stop for a minute. It feels very strange.